There's nothing in the world like Action Park. Like Action Park. Action Park. Action Park.
There is a water park in Vernon, New Jersey that carries the ghosts of its predecessor. The slides are modern, the safety standards rigorous, the liability waivers comprehensive. But the land remembers what came before, a place where teenage lifeguards drank beer on duty, where a water slide formed a complete vertical loop, and where the owner once paid employees $100 to test rides that he suspected might kill them. Action Park opened on May 26, 1978 as Vernon Valley Summer Park, born from the simple problem of keeping a ski resort profitable in the off-season. Eugene Mulvihill, a former penny stockbroker who had made his fortune through pump and dump schemes, purchased the Vernon Valley ski area in 1972 and combined it with the nearby Great Gorge Resort. The alpine slide he installed in 1976, a 2,700-foot concrete track down the mountain where riders controlled their own speed on small-wheeled sleds, proved popular enough to justify expansion. What Mulvihill built was not quite like other amusement parks. His philosophy, as his son Andy would later describe it, centered on self-responsibility. Visitors were expected to navigate the risks themselves. The park's advertising reflected this ethos. Action Park, there's nothing in the world like it. This was true. By 1982, Action Park boasted more than 50 rides spread across 3 sections. The main area featured water attractions built into the natural terrain of the Pocono Mountains. Across Route 94 lay Motor World, where visitors could drive go-karts and open-wheel racers with minimal supervision. The Alpine Center contained the mountain-based attractions, including the slide that would claim the park's first life. George Larson Jr. was 19 when his Alpine slide cart jumped the track in 1980, throwing him against a rock. The impact fractured his skull. He died from his injuries, becoming the first official fatality at a park that would accumulate at least 5 more before its closure. The deaths did not slow the expansion. In 1985, Mulvihill unveiled his most audacious creation, the Cannonball Loop. The water slide began with a conventional steep descent, then curved into a complete vertical loop before depositing riders in a splash pool below. The physics were questionable. The engineering was experimental. The state's advisory board on carnival amusement ride safety ordered it closed after approximately 1 month of operation, citing numerous injuries. The exact operational history of the Cannonball Loop remains disputed. While most sources indicate it closed permanently in 1985, some reports suggest it operated sporadically through the mid-1990s, opened at management's discretion for particularly brave or foolish visitors. The ride's reputation preceded it. Employees were reportedly offered $100 to test it, and few accepted. The water attractions proved equally hazardous in different ways. The tidal wave pool, a large freshwater basin that generated artificial waves, accumulated the most fatalities of any single attraction. Between 1982 and 1987, 3 visitors drowned in its churning water: 15-year-old George Lopez, 20-year-old Donald DePass, and 18-year-old Gregory Grandchamps. Staff began calling it the Grave Pool. The kayak experience, which sent visitors down a water slide into a pool where they were supposed to paddle kayaks through artificial rapids, proved its own liability when 27-year-old Jeffrey Nathan was electrocuted in 1982, apparently due to faulty wiring in the water. The attraction closed permanently after his death. The staff at Action Park were predominantly teenagers, many under the legal drinking age, working summer jobs with minimal training and questionable supervision. Andy Mulvihill, who worked at the park from junior high through college, would later acknowledge the challenges this created while disputing some of the more extreme accounts of employee behavior. The contradiction between official policy and on-site reality became a defining characteristic of the park's operation. Gene Mulvihill's troubles extended beyond the park itself. In 1984, he pleaded guilty to setting up a fraudulent insurance company in the Cayman Islands, receiving 3 years probation and nearly $300,000 in fines. The scheme was designed to provide liability coverage for his increasingly lawsuit-prone operation. The legal problems multiplied throughout the 1980s and early 1990s. Personal injury lawsuits accumulated faster than the park's legal team could settle them. Insurance premiums rose to prohibitive levels, eventually forcing Great American Recreation, Mulvihill's parent company, to self-insure rather than purchase traditional coverage. By the early 1990s, rides began closing permanently as the cost of operation and potential liability exceeded their revenue. The park that had once advertised itself as offering the kind of fun you can't get anywhere else was learning why such fun was unavailable elsewhere. The final addition came in 1991, a 70-foot bungee jumping tower, added at a time when the park was already struggling financially and legally. It operated until the park's closure 5 years later. Action Park closed permanently on September 2, 1996, a victim of bankruptcy and accumulated liabilities. Great American Recreation could no longer sustain the lawsuits, insurance costs, and declining attendance that characterized its final years. The land did not remain vacant long. In February 1998, IntraWest purchased the majority of the Vernon Valley Great Gorge property, including the former Action Park site. They undertook a comprehensive renovation, removing the most dangerous attractions and rebuilding others to modern safety standards before reopening the water section as Mountain Creek Water Park. The transformation was thorough. The Alpine slide was replaced by a mountain coaster that runs on tracks, preventing cars from flying off into the woods. The wave pool was redesigned with gentler waves and better visibility for lifeguards. The Cannonball Loop was dismantled entirely, its fiberglass sections presumably joining the archaeological record of failed recreational engineering. Motor World was never rebuilt. The land across Route 94 now hosts a condominium development, a restaurant, and additional parking for the ski resort. The go-karts and race cars that once operated with minimal oversight exist only in home videos and personal memory. In 2010, a group led by Eugene Mulvihill's family bought back the Mountain Creek property from IntraWest. The irony was not lost on industry observers. The Mulvihills had regained control of the land where their most notorious creation once stood. 4 years later, Andy Mulvihill made an unexpected decision. On June 14, 2014, Mountain Creek Water Park was rebranded back to Action Park, complete with marketing that referenced its infamous history while emphasizing modern safety standards. A new looping water slide called Zero G was installed, designed with proper engineering and safety protocols. The revival lasted exactly 2 years. On May 29, 2016, the park quietly reverted to Mountain Creek Water Park, apparently concluding that the Action Park brand carried too much historical weight for successful modern operation. Gene Mulvihill died on October 27, 2012, at age 78, 4 years before his son's experiment in resurrection ended. He never saw the attempt to rehabilitate his creation, nor its abandonment. In 2020, the documentary Class Action Park was released on HBO Max, introducing Action Park's legacy to a new generation through interviews with former employees and visitors, archival footage, and investigative journalism. The film presented the park as both cultural artifact and cautionary tale, a place where American entrepreneurship met American litigiousness in spectacular fashion. The documentary revealed the extent of what had been lost to time and litigation. Home video footage showed riders actually completing the Cannonball Loop, evidence that some people did successfully navigate Mulvihill's most questionable creation. The footage was reportedly discovered by a former park executive and uploaded to YouTube, becoming perhaps the only visual record of the ride in actual operation. For summer 2025, Mountain Creek Water Park has announced new attractions called Cannonball Falls and upgraded Tarzan Swings, names that deliberately echo the original Action Park while promising modern safety engineering. The marketing suggests institutional memory of what came before, packaged for contemporary consumption. What remains of Action Park exists primarily in testimony and artifacts. The physical structures are gone, replaced by safer alternatives or entirely different uses. The Alpine Center, where George Larson Jr. died, now hosts a mountain coaster that cannot derail. The pool where 3 young men drowned has been redesigned with better sightlines and gentler waves. The loop that injured countless riders was dismantled decades ago. The stories persist with the reliability of oral tradition and the distortion of time. Former visitors describe Action Park as a rite of passage, a place where teenagers learned about risk and consequence in ways that modern safety culture does not permit. The injuries they sustained became badges of honor, proof of their willingness to embrace danger for the sake of experience. The contradictions remain unresolved. Employee accounts of widespread intoxication and chaos conflict with management claims of responsibility and oversight. The exact number of fatalities varies depending on which sources are consulted and how deaths are categorized. The Cannonball Loop's operational history shifts between different tellings, sometimes closing permanently in 1985, sometimes operating sporadically through the 1990s. These inconsistencies are not flaws in the historical record. They are the historical record. Evidence of a place that operated outside conventional documentation, where unofficial practices shaped daily reality more than official policies. Action Park existed during a specific moment in American recreational culture, when personal injury lawsuits were less common, safety regulations less comprehensive, and public tolerance for risk substantially higher. It could not survive the transition to modern liability standards and corporate risk management. But it existed. For 18 years, a place operated where visitors could slide down a mountain on wheeled sleds, loop through a water slide, and drive go-karts with minimal supervision. People were injured. Some died. Many more emerged with stories they would tell for decades. The forest in Vernon, New Jersey grows over the concrete footings where dangerous rides once stood. The land remembers, in the way that land remembers everything, imperfectly, incompletely, but persistently. Somewhere beneath the safer present lies the archaeology of a more reckless past, waiting for future historians to excavate what we were willing to risk in the name of fun. The question was never whether Action Park was good or bad, safe or dangerous. The question was what people believed about risk and pleasure, and what happened when those beliefs built something real in the world. The answer stands in the New Jersey hills, transformed but still there, still drawing visitors who want to slide down mountains and swim in artificial waves, just under closer supervision than their predecessors thought
There's
necessary.
nothing in the world like Action Park. Like Action Park. Action Park.